Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service, filled with hope. This is the third week that we will again discuss that word, hope. I would love to think that all of those watching this at the moment would have seen the first two channelings in this 4-channel series about hope. But that's not always the case. So as I said on the first time, I'm going to define it. And I'm going to do it in a similar way every single program. It's important that you understand the power of the one word. It's important that you understand what it is not and what it is. Hope is probably one of the most powerful energies a human can have. And I'm going to explain as much as I can, and I'm also then going to give you an area of the 4 hopes that we are covering, the one for today. But I must go through this first. I want you to see and feel and understand what hope truly is. There are several attributes. One, the first, is what hope is not. Hope is not faith. Now we're dealing with words here. Words in many languages mean many kinds of things. The semantics, as you would say, of what you've been taught a word is or is not. This may then change that. I hope it does. It will help you to perhaps reframe what hope truly is to me, or what it is to the other side of the veil. It's so important. Hope is not faith. Faith is something that has been given to you as a word where you trust unseen forces to then do something for you that you're not doing yourself. That is the element of faith. Hope is not faith. Hope is active, faith is passive. This is how we will define it for these lessons that I'm giving you in these 4 weeks. It's what hope is to me, to you, in the teaching of today that I want you to grasp. Let's go with the first one. Hope is the energy of positive expectations. Hope is something you send forward for yourself. Imagine that long train track of your future, of your life, or for instance, just a little bit of the next week or 2 or 3, doesn't matter. If you truly have that energy of positive expectations to put in front of you, it changes everything. Absolutely everything. 2 people in a room. One tells the other, you're going to die because you have this certain disease. In comes the third person who says, wait a minute, there's been new research. No, you're not. There's something else. You've just gone from despair to hope. And the hope may keep you alive. The hope may save your life. All of these things we talk about continually. What the human being can do with their own chemistry and how they feel about things, that's hope. It changes everything. Hope is a designer energy. Hope is something where you can design benevolent outcome. You design it, the positive expectations, and you send it forward in your own life. Do you like that? Hope is health. Hope is health. Hope becomes your future. It's an energy that's so active that it becomes what you tell it to become. This is the power of hope. Hope is something that can also destroy despair. Hope destroys depression. That's what hope truly is. I wanted to give you these things today that I gave you the last 2 times we were with you, perhaps in slightly different words, and we're going to do it one more time, for I want you to see what hope can do. The circle of 12 tonight will be another exercise just like the last 2, very similar, where you package hope and you send it forward in a very visual way that you can understand what it does for the human psyche, what it does for the human chemistry. There are those who will casually use the word, well, I hope this works, not understanding. That's more like faith. Hope is an affirmation action. It puts together a package that changes the chemistry of the human being, relaxes you, and puts you on a course of benevolence. There is nothing like it, dear ones. To have hope when there was no hope is like black and white. To have hope when there is no hope is like turning on the light in a dark room. Some of you have actually had this happen, where you were in depression or despair over something you felt was happening, only to have it all turn around in a moment. The phone call that you get where there's been a problem with loved ones, and you think the worst and you wonder what has happened in that moment, whether they're safe or not safe. And then another phone call comes, and it's the actual loved one. Mom, Dad, I'm fine. What has happened in that moment or two? That is what hope is and does. That is the feeling that I'm speaking about. But rather than having that kind of a cause and effect in a phone call or no phone call or worry or no worry, can you package that as though the phone call had already come in and put it upon yourself and send it forward? This week I want you to concentrate on one hope for the planet. Again, a hope that's the energy of positive expectation, sending it out. And that is one of the things that we have spoken of now 4 months. Light is starting to occur on the planet. That's a metaphor. Transparency of thought. Light, that would be the winning of light over dark. That would be a higher consciousness attribute that starts to win over a lower consciousness attribute. And this has been the way of it for eons, that the lower consciousness always seems to win. Always. There are some of you who actually have seen this in your life so often that you have a hard time believing me that light will win. And instead, you only will look at history and say, well, it never has before. Why should I think so now? We've told you. We told you. Because since 2012, things are different. This has been the shift that so many have spoken of. So many indigenous have talked about. Etched into their rocks, it is. Etched into their pyramids, it is. And here it is. Light will start to win over darkness, and that is why there's so much trouble right now on this planet, because it's fighting back. Did you notice? Uprising where uprising normally isn't. It's happening because there are individuals who are starting to say, no more darkness. We will not tolerate it anymore. I want you to see a hope package and send it forward for the light of the planet. The light of the planet. The light of the planet. Can you do that? Other weeks, we're talking about yourself for other things, but today, this Wednesday, we speak of hope for light. And you're going to see that in places you don't expect. Places that normally are known for corruption. You're going to start to see some light at that point there, and you'll go, well, that's different. Well, that feels different. Do they really mean that? Can this really be happening? You're going to see it at levels that you never saw it before, even a little. And then you start to see what happens. It's almost like light is infectious in a very good way. Light creates light. It erases darkness, and more are attracted to it. They're attracted to compassion and kindness as a way of things. They're attracted to truth as a way of things. You're attracted to those who would think forward. What is the best solution for this or that puzzle, or what will help the most people, truly help them? And they move, you might say, in ways, this darkness that goes from greed and corruption more and more to the opposite, where they see compassion and kindness as a result. They see it as a goal. And they start to see things completely differently than ever before. And that's the key. Light for this planet. Can you do it? Can you do it? Can you sit and send light? That is the hope of the planet at this moment, this day, right now. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. The theme this day seems to be togetherness and coherence. A theme that you would think is not that new. But what I want to tell you, that in today's energy, it's very different. For many years, if not centuries, there have been those who understood the light that would come together, sometimes secretly, sometimes openly, depending upon the culture where they were and whether they were part of a system. And they would, what I will call, hold vigilance for the planet. And there would be the same kind of thanks that Adirondack has asked for. There would be prayers for those who were suffering, or perhaps during the wars. There would be a lot of sending of energy and good thoughts represented. And what we wish to tell you, dear ones, it's not a new idea. That together you are powerful. And that your thoughts did something. They went someplace, somehow. But now suddenly, with the appearance of this new energy, there is a formation, perhaps of that which is before you in a succinct manner that is starting to make sense of why it works. And when you start to understand that there is a system involved, and suddenly the system is graduating to a place where you can feel it and understand it and work with it, it makes a difference. But more than that, today your thoughts, old souls and light workers who wish to listen to this, have more power than they've ever had before. Power. The power to go someplace and soothe. The power to be recognized all across the world by those who don't even know what they're feeling. Now you know about the field, and you're beginning to measure it and beginning to talk about it. Now you know about the nodes and the nulls that have only recently been matched. That's a machine, dear ones, an esoteric, beautiful machine. And I want you to think of something, a metaphor of that machine pouring into this planet, a coating. Perhaps you can see it in your own metaphysical, metaphorical eyes, a coating. And the coating we're going to call transference, and it goes all around the globe and coats it with something new. That coating of transference is an allowance that has never been there before for an energy that has also never been there before, where the thoughts and the prayers and the manifestations of a few can change the whole planet, where coherence is so much easier, and where the few can start to generate something like this group or those listening, where not only is peace being sent to soothe the hearts and the souls of those who need it around this planet, but also compassion, and then information. Not raw information like in a book. I'll call it the information of love. What it's like to be able not to just be soothed, but to have the tools to continue that and come out of things faster and easier, of grief and hardship. It's new. And so this exercise that you went through just a moment ago, beautiful, where you were asked to have planetary influence, is no longer what it was. I'm telling you that it's only months old. A coating of transference, a new word in that context, means that the transfer of energy is instantaneous. Goes around the planet from a few to the many, and they feel it. Almost so much that they can see you doing it. They can see the hands raised in prayer and thanks, and something happens. The field is affected, the potentials are changed, and the lives that are lost start to mean something. That's who you are. It's only begun. And there will be experiments conducted like there have been in the past with amazing results about how your energy of compassion is transmitted almost instantaneously to those who need it all around this planet, who suffer and cry and are depressed, and suddenly they're not. And they can't tell you why, but you're going to sit here and know why. Because it works. Because it works. Because it works. Welcome to a new world where you mean something. And if you're one who sits here and has very little self-worth because of the things you've gone through or those who've told you things, I want to tell you something. This alone establishes your worth. No matter what age you are or your gender or who you think you are, old soul, you've been through it. And that creates wisdom, energy, maturity.
and an engine of transmission of peace and beauty, makes a difference and goes right on that new grid. That's who you are. I want you to think for yourself that you're standing tall. You mean something. It's why you're here. I want you to take that home with you. And when you think of these things, in order to then place compassion on the grid, I want you to see results. I want you to visualize someone in trouble who then isn't. Someone who is suffering with grief who then suddenly isn't. Because they have something that's overcome them. And they don't know what it is, but they're feeling so much better about themselves and life and what's happened. And you can sit there alone in your bedroom and smile and say, it works. Because it does. Something very old, a principle, a prayer of sending energy, is now becoming something you never expected. That is one of the reasons the nodes and the nulls are here. And that is another reason why the consciousness of this planet is raising. It's all about helping the planet and others. It's starting to go beyond that metaphysical idea that you've had that's so strange to many about thought making a difference and you making a difference. Welcome to a new energy, dear ones, that you control. The energy of compassion and love and transference of energy that's very needed right now on this planet. Stand tall in your worth. That's who you are. That's who you are. I am Kryon, in love with humanity. And you're getting a better idea why. And that's enough for now. And so it is.
Greetings, dear ones. I'm Kryon of Magnetic Service. This is the channel in the land of Egypt, starting to visit some of the most magnificent structures that the Egyptians have created. Dear ones, amongst the pillars of this great structure, when we speak of the ancients of Egypt, we speak about the pure times. When we speak about the elegance of what they did or what they knew or what they believed, we speak of the pure times. And the definition of the pure times would not necessarily fall into the dynasty numbers, but it's the middle times, the times before any conqueror or foreigner could become a pharaoh or become other belief systems spread here. A pure time meant that the Egyptian gods were still gods of love before any others came and intertwined themselves through hundreds of years in belief. Before any foreigner come and would be part of their management or politics or lineage. We speak of the pure times, pure Egyptian times, and what they wrote upon the walls for you to see about how they lived or what they believed. You sit in a place right now that wants to talk to you about some hidden things that you don't hear much about, but it's everywhere. Count the pillars.
And you will find almost exclusively that the Egyptians were glued to base 12 mathematics. And we have said this before, and although it is not in Egyptology, I will say to you again, there'll come a day when the elegance of base 12 mathematics will surface, and it won't be called the new math. It's going to be called the ancient math. I'll say this again. To any mathematician listening now, they will smile at this phrase. Elegant math reveals itself. And what we mean by that is that the patterns and the sequences of good mathematics start talking to you. And a good mathematician will see them and will smile. There'll be an aha. This sequence leads to this sequence, and oh my, take a look at this. The fractals that you find from biology to geometry and space will all talk about the 12 sides, the 6s, the 3s, the 4s. Seldom do you find 5s and 10s. Seldom. For the universe is made up in 6s and 3s and 4s, 12s, 18s. Count the pillars. You think that that is an accident. Count the priests and that which they felt were the sacred numbers. You think that was an accident. And you're not going to find 5s and 10s. And I present this channeling in this way right now as a warm-up to the elegance of this society. Indeed, it was the beginning. Indeed, there was ancient things and duality and all the things that you have and multiples of this or that. But dear ones, if you take a look at the core of an Egypt that was able to sustain itself with a God of benevolence, that's so important. Did you notice that this temple, as huge as it might be, echoes even the smallest that you've seen? Even the smallest ones. And the first thing you see is the 2 pillars created then for a space for the sun to rise. Here is a philosophy for you, before I get to the main one. A philosophy that says that the sun rises every day just like you, and that it is a refreshing day. No matter what is going on in your life, the sun rises between the 2 pillars to say that God is smiling on you and things are fresh and they are new. And it's a benevolence, and it's symbology, and it's metaphoric. It's not a worship of the sun. Dear ones, the Egypt of then gave you metaphor after metaphor. So much on the walls that you see here are stories of energy, not necessarily even physical. The story of life for the upper and the lower Nile, a story of love of country, of benevolence. You don't find that, dear ones, in other places, not like this. Let me tell you something beautiful. For 30 years, I have been channeling, and you can call this a belief system if you wish, but it's not a system. It's the basic truth of the love of God It's of what you would call the magic that the multidimensional energy of compassion contains. Something that right now is starting to be studied on this planet called the field and coherence. Measurable compassion. And the Egyptians knew it. I told you in this teaching for 30 years of one specific thing that I wanted you to remember from the beginning, that you are dearly loved. Oh, but there's more. Here is what I've told you again and again. Listen to this. For what I have told you again and again is written on these walls. Listen to this. You may live your life and you may never look at God or Spirit or the Creator or whatever you wish to call that source that is the essence of love. You may never look at it. You may walk your life too busy. You may walk around and say, well, I don't believe in these esoteric things. You may even say, I don't want to have a part of the belief systems or go to the church or the synagogue. You say, I'm apart for all those things. I'm a modern human today. I've got modern things today. And at the end of your life, I have told you this, that all of the time that you have spent ignoring the Creator has been looking at you with a hand out that says, take this anytime you want to, if you choose to. Free choice. In other words, you may not look at God, but God looks at you. And that every single human being is made in the image of love and walks this earth equal in that, with an equal chance to take the hand of the magic of love and find a better life. This has been the message of Kryon, 30 years. And then you come here and you realize that as they slowly unburied these structures from the sand, the pieces and the parts that you can read that were not obliterated by other belief systems tell you the same identical thing. The temples are all built in a protocol, dear ones, of large to small, of a straight line leading to the altar where only the Pharaoh goes, and perhaps a priest or two. A large place that would contain the commoners, but they could come in, not covered so that the sky would shine upon them. All of these things, metaphors to a God of light. The inner chambers became smaller and the priests more sacred, leading all the way to where only the Pharaoh could stand in a place and do something, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And it just yells that there is a protocol that the commoners cannot quite see inside because it's so sacred, and God is great and God is light. But God can always look at them. This was the philosophy, that each of them also had a bubble, a higher self, and we've told you that before. I have called it a higher self. They call it something else, but it's written on the walls. There is a self that is apart from the physical of every single human. And that self is the vehicle which carries the light that a human has to the next life, beyond the veil, after death. The metaphysics that I have been giving you for 30 years is exactly that. Could it be that as ancient as these were, that right up to the Pharaoh himself or herself knew these truths, and as the best they could would give that to them and all that were around them, right down to the commoner, who would then be told by the priests what happened inside. So what do you think happened inside? We sit inside, not quite at the altar, not quite at the small room which is sacred that the Pharaoh entered. What did he do? There are so many who don't study any of these things and said, well, they went in there, they had sacrifice and all of the things that pagans would do. What if I told you that what he did, I'd like to invite you to do someday? The Pharaoh recognized the Lord of Light, the magic of love. Whatever name it had and whatever type of God it had, the essence, the magic was haika, was all through these gods. This was the magic. This was the lineage even of the gods. It was love. It was healing. This was part of the scenario of the God of light. And you can just see the Pharaoh and what he did. And I'm going to tell you something that is not necessarily taught to the extent it should be. Dear ones, this place was built for music, but not the music that you think. It was built for tones, certain sonorities that were sung that meant something because they were all part of mathematics. If I told you that you started this particular tour in the Great Pyramid of Giza and that inside the king's chamber it was about tones and mathematics, dear ones, the Pharaoh sang. He sang. One of the things that people in the courtyard listened for is sometimes the Pharaoh's strong voice could be heard because he didn't mumble. He sang as loud as he could about the Lord of Light in this place, blessing the life of the land, upper and lower, continuing the fertility of light. And although there was indeed a hierarchy of royalty, the royalty shared it. And indeed, perhaps in this particular place, only one man or woman could go and do something and talk to God. It was shared. And immediately, the Pharaoh would share it with the priests, and the priests would share it with the other priests, and those in the common areas would hear, the Lord of Light blesses you and Egypt and the land and will keep it alive and safe and beautiful and help you with guidance to the other side of the veil when death sometimes, eventually, will take you all. And I can just hear them saying, death has no sting. You're here for a little while, but the real truth is what happens beyond. And if you've heard that before, it's been from me, which tells about a beautiful creative source who knows your name and is light and who loves you dearly. Don't be surprised if an Egyptologist will read that on the walls. Because the Egyptians, even the ancient ones, even with the protocols of the gods, they knew it. They knew it. Now, what is missing here? I will tell you that music, tones, tonalities, and the mathematics of the sounds meant something. And in an elegant society that used these things, there had to be musical notation. Not all of it was simply orally taught, because there had to be a protocol that was taught in the temples, musical notation. That is a way to inscribe music in a way that generation from generation would know what the notes were and how they were combined. Every elegant society had musical notation. So I will say to the Egyptologist, have you found some things that you cannot interpret, or you're uncertain, or are they a little too mystical perhaps to interpret properly? They might just be musical notation. Every elegant society also had that which respected its own history and the history before it. There had to be museums here, dear ones. And whether they were in the temples where they would belong or perhaps underground, they had their own museums. Sometimes archaeologists forget this, and they dig down and they find things and they say, well, this had to belong to a certain time or an era, not understanding they had just broken into an inner chamber of the museum of an ancient. It's here as well. This society was elegant, a society that had medicine where they washed their hands so thoroughly they showed it on the walls as an indication that they understood there had to be something that later became germs. This is the elegance that we speak of the ancients. Not just that they had a God of love, but they used it. Indeed, not everything lasted. Indeed, things changed. But I wish to honor the elegance of the writings on the walls, of those times which were pure. A time when they said there is a God of light, and there's a magic of love and benevolence for all. Not judgment, not horror, but light. And that the temples were built so that you could look at them and realize that they worship the idea, the metaphysical idea that when the sun comes up every day, it's for you. And it represents a new life, a new beginning, a fresh start. It's early enough so that when you leave this place and get up, the sun will be coming up, and you will watch this. Part of the reason the time was shifted, and why this temple is built the way it is, a metaphor for new beginnings. Don't be fooled by the idea that old is something that didn't work. What if it was just the opposite? There's a lot here to learn. Take these things and use them and discern them for yourself. Do not be confused by the duality that you also see on the walls, for they were human beings, just like you. You would say you believe in a very loving God. Indeed, if they could look at your history, they might be confused as well. Look for the light here and celebrate what they had. Let the sun shine upon you this day in the very way that the architects of this temple intended it to, with the metaphor of good things and benevolence and hope and life for the land. And so it is.